It's out in the middle of nowhere, and possibly because there was the state had weren't effective at lobbying against the site. So it's sort of this complex web of like political back and forth that eventually led to the Yucca Mountain as being the site that was proposed for the second nuclear waste repository. And I'll try to go into that a little bit more. So in 2002, Yucca Mountain was approved by Congress. 6 years later, the Secretary of Energy applied for the license. In 2008, the President Barack Obama came into office, and the next year he stopped the attempt to construct the site, and I'm not sure exactly what the reason or why that happened, but it involved the state's pushback on the site being located in Nevada. So in light of that, efforts were being made to continue the site's development, and the Blue Ribbon Commission kind of led those efforts to first find a new location in 2010, and then they sort of failed to do that. So in 2018, the new administration requested congressional approval for licensing. I guess I should have talked about this earlier, but the actor network for this issue is huge and interrelated and difficult to pin down. But I identified 4 major actors, starting with the federal government, the energy industry, state and local governments, and the environment. And all of those are tied together inextricably, with nuclear waste sort of at the center. In the second tier, I grouped governmental agencies, policies, state legislatures, and then residents, and then natural resources, the current energy grid, and the geography. The major powers, I think, are really within the federal government circle, specifically governmental agencies like the Department of Energy, and the Environmental Protection Agency, and then beneath that, the Nuclear Regulatory Commission, which oversees all of the construction and licensing of nuclear power plants in the U.S., and also has a hand in the construction and licensing of nuclear waste facilities. And the NRC is the one that regulates the entire industry and puts forward all of the safety measures that the industry has to make good on. So in conclusion, I don't know if I was real clear about this, but I am all for the nuclear renaissance. I view nuclear waste as mostly a major social and political issue. I don't think it's a technical issue. We've already solved the technical aspects of harnessing nuclear energy. It's an extremely regulated energy source. Although it comprises 20% of the energy that we use in the U.S., I think it gets more negative public backlash than the other 2 major energy sources that are based on burning fossil fuels. And I tried to find some statistics on why people felt so negatively about nuclear power. And I thought this was pretty interesting. This bar graph in the lower right, this came from a Yale survey. It took place in 2005 and 2011, and it just says, what is the first word or phrase that comes to your mind when you think of nuclear power? And most of these are negative words. I thought it was interesting because in 2011, that's when Fukushima happened. And you can see the difference. Between 2005 and 2011, more people used the word disaster to describe nuclear power after that happened, and the word bad. And then at the very end is the waste issue, which only 2% of people use that word to describe nuclear power. So I think it's telling that the way that we talk about nuclear power is very negative, and also that people are not very concerned with nuclear waste unless it's in their backyards. And so I think the major solution to this is that we need to shift from this sort of like negative perception that we have about nuclear energy and talk about it in a positive way. It does a lot for our country, and it's great as an energy source, and it's very safe. I think there are only 5 nuclear disasters that have occurred in the world. I know of at least 3, but the worst one in the US was Three Mile Island, and that resulted in 0 deaths and released a very small amount of radiation, but it got so much media coverage that we still remember it today. So I guess my solution is that we need to change public perception in some way, and I'm not sure about how to do that. Like I said before, technical solutions already exist. Reprocessing and recycling fuel is not something that we need to figure out how to do. Other countries have already done it, and the United States has attempted to do that in the past, but gave up on it because of a cost issue. So funding is another problem that needs to be addressed that would affect nuclear waste. And I guess the last thing I want to talk about as far as technical issues go, we've come a long way in terms of reactor design, and that is something that will continue to mitigate the nuclear waste problem, specifically fast reactors, which use a different moderator and use less fuel as they operate. So combined with the technical aspect and a social transition to acceptance of nuclear power, I think that those things would solve the nuclear waste issue. Okay, and here are some of my references. So I'd love to answer any questions anybody has. And I think that's all I've got. Thank you.